Good evening. Welcome to the Wednesday, June 18th, 2025 regular meeting of the Calvert County Planning Commission. I'll take attendance in order to establish a quorum. Commissioner Freeland,
Here.
Commissioner Gadway,
Present.
Commissioner Kernan,
Here. Commissioner
McQueen,
Here.
Commissioner Weems.
Here.
Is Commissioner Burry with us?
He is online. David, can you unmute?
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, loud and clear. Thanks for
Okay,
being with us
thank
today,
you.
sir. We have full attendance, so therefore we have a quorum and we are called to order. If you all please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That brings us to item 3, action on the proposed agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve and adopt the proposed agenda.
Second.
Mr. Chair, if I may, would it be possible to move the traffic impact session, work session, up to the first substantive agenda item? Unfortunately, I have a hard depart in 60 to 90 minutes for a business meeting here. And this work session, I think, was called as a result of some of the motions I made in the past 2 meetings. Over.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Weems, is that all right if we adjust your,
Yes.
all those in favor? Oh, wait a minute, I need a second for
I
that.
seconded it, yeah.
It is seconded, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to a commissioner's citation for our Dr. Richard Holler, one of our long-term members. Commissioner Hance, if you want to grab the mic.
Hey, okay. So, Dr. Holler, you have served this county a long time, many decades. I'm not going to make you stand up for this, for sure. I've known Dr. Holler a long time. Most of you may not know, he served in county government. He served in the school system before he came to the Planning Commission. So tonight's just a culmination of your many, many decades of service to the citizens of Calvert County. And we truly, truly greatly appreciate that. So we just want to take this opportunity to present you with a county commissioner citation. Be it known that on behalf of the citizens of Calvert County, Maryland, the Board of County Commissioners extends its sincere appreciation to Dr. Richard Holler for his 9 years of dedicated service on the Planning Commission, concluding his term on February 28, 2025. Appointed by the Board, the Planning Commission serves as both an advisory and decision-making body, reviewing and guiding county planning decisions in partnership with planning and zoning staff. During his tenure, Dr. Holler played a vital role in shaping recommendations on the comprehensive plan, town centers master plans, zoning changes, public infrastructure development, and land use policies. Dr. Holler brought a distinguished record of public service to the Commission, including his role as county administrator from 1991 to 1999, where he oversaw day-to-day operations, 8 department heads, and budgets totaling more than $145 million. You know, we give the schools more than that now. Things have changed a little bit. He has led Holler Associates, LLC, since 1999, providing consulting and mediation services across sectors and conducting more than 400 mediations in community, family, and business disputes. Earlier in his career, Dr. Holler served in several key educational leadership roles, including Superintendent of Schools in Kent County, Maryland, Associate Superintendent in Calvert County, and Assistant Superintendent in multiple Maryland and New Jersey school systems. Over more than 2 decades in public education, He led curriculum reform, managed large-scale staffing and budgeting efforts, and guided capital improvement projects to enhance school facilities. His deep expertise in legislative procedures, public administration, education, real estate, and zoning issues made him a valued voice on the Planning Commission discussions. The board thanks Dr. Holler for his insight, leadership, and lasting contributions to the county's growth and development. The Calvert County Board of Commissioners is pleased to confer upon you this Commissioner citation, given our hands and sealed this 18th day of June 2025, signed by all five. Dr. Holler, we truly appreciate your service to Calvert County. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. Dr. Holler, you will be missed, and thank you for all your service to the Planning Commission. We truly appreciate it. And we do have cake for you, so anyone in the audience who wishes to have a piece of cake, please help yourself. And that brings us to item number 4, actions on the proposed summary of actions.
We have the May 21st, 2025, the Planning Commission public hearing. Summary of actions. Do I have a motion?
Motion to accept.
Thank you, sir. Second?
Second.
And we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Stands accepted. Also, we have the May 21st, 2025 Planning Commission regular meeting summary of actions. Could I get a motion?
Motion, I move that we approve and adopt this summary of actions for May 21st.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That brings us to item number 5, recognitions of persons attending the meeting. Tonight, from Planning and Zoning, we have Jason Brinkley, Director, Rachel O'Shea, Deputy Director of Zoning. We have Tay Harris, Long Range Planner, Christine Fenimore, Principal Planner, Will Hager, Planner 3, Jessica Gattano, Planner 3, Jay Cousineau, Planner 3, Amalia Plicktam, Planner 3, Kat Lockwood, Planner 2, Charlene Johnson, Planner 1. From Department of Public Works, we have J.R. Cosgrove, Director. Also with us tonight, we have from Park and Rec, Kirsten Perry, Special Facilities Division Chief. From Economic Development, we have Nicole White, Business Development Specialist. Serving as our Planning Commission Clerk tonight, we have Becky Parkinson, and our legal counsel is John Mattingly. And I am Tamara Blake Wallace, Acting Deputy Director and Planning Commission Administrator. That brings us to item 6, major subdivisions for final review and approval. We do not have any tonight. And at this time on the agenda, it has been moved the work session for traffic studies.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Commissioner. I'm J.R. Cosgrove, Director of Public Works. To my right, I have John Rantaz from Wallace Montgomery. He's one of our on-call traffic consultants, and he's going to go over the presentation we have tonight for traffic studies and answer any questions you all may have. I'll turn it over to John.
Yes, thank you so much for having me this evening. So, I guess a few years ago, actually, I performed this presentation for the County Council. It's more of an educational briefing on basically a high level of traffic studies in general, how they're developed, and some of the components of them. Obviously, once I kind of go through this, if there's any questions about the information.
Could you pull your microphone a little closer, please? Thank you.
Is that better?
Much, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry. Okay. So again, this is a little more of a higher level about traffic studies. Obviously, JR, we've been helping out with some reviews of a lot of traffic impact analysis type of studies for you on some new developments. So on the agenda here, so first I want to kind of go through the idea of what level of service means, and it's basically what it means and how we calculate that. Go through the capacity analysis process. I do have a little spiel about signal timings. I think that was an element someone was interested in hearing about, so included that as well. And then kind of generally go through the requirements of a traffic impact analysis and basically the components of a traffic impact analysis. Okay. So first thing first is just in general, so level of service, this is sort of a grade that we give like intersections and segments of roadway on how well they're operating. So per the county ordinance, when it comes to a traffic impact analysis, we try to provide a grading, we provide a threshold of what is considered adequate or not, this threshold. So for county roads and town center roads, the level of service of C is considered adequate, C or better. When it comes to state roads, obviously there's a lot of the larger roadways and intersections in this county, they're more of a level of service D or better considered adequate. A lot of times when I'll kind of explain this a little bit in the next two slides, is a lot of times we're talking about the overall level of service of the intersection. There's lots of different components of an intersection that have a level of service too. Okay, so the methodology that we do for developing the level of service, it comes from it's a nationally practiced highway capacity manual. If you've seen a traffic study, you've probably seen this in there. It's a widely used type of methodology. It is the preferred methodology too. So you can actually analyze intersections, corridors, and ramps with these methodologies. A lot of the impact analysis that we do see in these studies are more for intersections. So a lot of this information we kind of focus more for intersections. So that the outcomes and some of the results that you see from these methodologies, the level of service, the volume over capacity. This is a ratio of volume over the size of the roadway. Any resulting cues associated at the intersections. There you might see, because a lot of times on the Maryland State Highway along their TIAs, they want to see this critical lane volume methodology. This is a little bit more of a planning level, rudimentary type of methodology that's definitely not preferred. So a lot of the information I'm going to talk about is more on the highway capacity methodologies. So here's a table that kind of shows you the grades. So obviously A being good, and F is more failing. So again, that C and D is that range in the middle is sort of where those thresholds happen, right? So for a lot of those county roads, that C is considered acceptable, the D is not. But for an SHA roadway, it's more the D. So this is for intersections, and the level of services are based on delay. So it's average control delay. So all the vehicles, this is sort of the average amount of waiting their time they have at that intersection that they're waiting at the movements and the approaches. So you can kind of see for an unsignalized intersection, it's a little different threshold for those. So the little lower tolerance of delay of waiting there with an unsignalized intersection versus signalized. So at a signalized intersection, you have a little different pieces of the level of service. You have the overall intersection level of service. Then you can kind of break it down by the different approaches, right? So you have a four-legged intersection, you have a northbound, southbound, eastbound, westbound. So you'll see a level of service associated for that approach as well. Again, it's more of an average delay for that approach. And then you also have it by movement. So say northbound, you have a left turn, a through movement, and a right turn movement. So there's a level of service that's sort of associated for each one of those movements as well.
On that slide, at
Yeah.
the top, it says S/V, I assume abbreviation for vehicle. Does that mean those numbers are seconds people are waiting?
Seconds per vehicle. So
Thank you.
yes, exactly. All right. And obviously, once you can see that the higher the delay, the worse the level service value. So you can kind of see, like for a level service D, your threshold for signal as intersections from 35 seconds to 55 seconds. So that's how you sort of calculate that level of service. This is just an example. This is just a table, a resulting table you'll see at a traffic impact study of all the level of service. This is based on a number of different intersections. You can kind of see this whole long list of different movements that are at an intersection. Each one has its own little level service grade. It's the amount of seconds, the amount of delay it experiences, and the V over C ratio. This is the picture on the left is actually from your transportation plan, so the planning document. That this is more of a kind of shows you little pie charts of the different colors that you see at some of the larger intersections in the county. Obviously, most of these are along Route 2, Route 4. So So you can kind of see those colors, the heat map displays, of which ones are operating better than the others. Again, these are more overall level of service. We're not going to talk about it too much, but we also, through the highway capacity man, you can also define the level of service for a corridor, a segment of roadway 2. So this is just kind of explains how you determine it for the level of service for those. It's a little different than intersections. Okay, so now digging into how do we actually do the analysis. So the first thing is about the analysis periods. A lot of times you'll see is you want to kind of a lot of times the studies focus on the worst volume time periods, right? The peak periods. So your morning commute is usually roughly during the weekday from 7 to 9 a.m. And I think people potentially leaving. Obviously, people coming back from as well in the evening peak periods, 4 to 6 p.m.
So who determines that time slot is the peak? I mean, we're a bedroom community to some major metropolitan areas, and our rush hour starts much earlier than 7 o'clock.
Yeah, because you gotta start your commute time to get, say, to DC much sooner. So, yeah, so that's sort of a general time frame. So usually with the analysis, you'll pick the worst 1 hour time slot. Maybe it is like maybe from 6:30 to 7:30. So it's just in general. That's sort of roughly when you see the commuting patterns. So, and that's we determine that by the traffic light, like a turning movement count. We'll kind of look at the by turning movement count by hour. Actually, they actually count them by increments of 15 minutes. So we'll kind of look at that volumes and then determine which are the highest of the 4 15-minute volumes. That will determine sort of your peak period. If that makes sense. Yeah. But yeah, it could be much sooner than 7 a.m. for sure. And obviously for a lot of traffic impact analyses, we got certain proposed commercial conditions. You may be developing a lot of weekend type of volumes. So we would also determine any weekend peak hour periods as well for those type of studies. You can tell usually from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. is roughly when you see those peak hours. So a couple of the software programs that we use, maybe you've heard of them or not. So the highway capacity software is something we use. The picture on the left here, that little simulation, little model, little cartoon model there, that's actually the Synchro. It's called Synchro in SimTraffic. It's a micro simulation model that we use to do a lot of our analysis. Maryland State Highway actually uses Synchro to determine a lot of their signal timings. So obviously the Route 424 corridor has a corridor of coordinated systems of signals there. So that's kind of what they use to sort of determine and evaluate how to time their signals. Okay, so kind of going, there we go, signal timings. So talking about signal timings, so the different components of signal timings, just want to make sure you kind of understand and aware of what they are. So signals can be considered an isolated signal. So a signal it's standalone, it's by itself. There's no other adjacent signals like miles away from each other. So it actually acts on its own. It has its own isolated signal timing mechanism. You also have something called a coordinated signal system. So again, State Highway, a lot of these systems are SHA-owned, maintained signals, especially along the 2-4. Those are coordinated systems. A lot of times, if that signal is within a half mile from each other, they actually are connected. They actually talk to each other. Their signal timings are actually adjusted, and they're actually kind of timed together to be able to actually work together as a continuous flow in theory, right? A lot of times, the SHA are supposed to, on a regular basis, go out there and kind of look at and reevaluate the timings and make sure they're operating as efficiently as possible. Sometimes it requires some adjustments to them. And a lot of the components to adjust those signal timings, this little list here. So the entire signal has a cycle length. So 150 seconds is allocated to that signal from going from green from one phase to green to the next phase. So that entire signal cycle length is a certain amount, okay? Within that, say 150 seconds as an example, is it's sort of split out into separate it's separate movements. So like your northbound movement, it goes at the same time as southbound movement. Those signal times have its own split. So that's split timing for that particular phase and movement. You might have separate phases for turning movements, like left turn phases, right? So you may have a separate timing split for the left turn phases too. So the turn phases also have a different type of phasing. So you might see, like this is a picture here, an example. You'll see those red left arrows. So that's considered an exclusive left turn phase, right? So I think this is actually a Dares Beach Road signal. So 231, yeah. Oh, 231, yes, thank you. So yeah, so the example. So it's in this case, you have a separate left turn phase that goes by itself. It's exclusive. You're not allowed to, while it's green, no one else is allowed to actually, to progress, just the left turn movement. So you'll see some other types, of, like a 5-head signal head out there, with the 5 signal heads up there. That's more called a signal, exclusive permissive phasing. I don't know if you've ever heard that before or not. So obviously you have an initial exclusive left turn movement for the left turn. Then after a while, it'll switch off to permissive. So obviously, those left turns will have to wait for the opposing movements to go. So that's another component of sort of the signal timings. A coordinated system, again, sort of a strand of multiple signals together that coordinate or that communicate together. There's an offset. So there's an offset component to it. Say the first signal goes. It triggers maybe 5 or 6 seconds later, then it'll trigger the next signal to go, sort of like just to make sure that flow is sort of more continuous and efficient. And obviously you've got some more of your safety components, so your clearance intervals, you have your yellow and your all red phases that you can see out there. Again, this is to help clear out the residual vehicles before you switch to the next phase. So.
On the coordinated signal systems you're talking about,
Yeah.
through Dunkirk, the signals in Dunkirk that are close to each other, and throughout all the signals and the new signal coming up that looks like it just got installed this last week in Prince Frederick, is all the needed hardware and software in place to have all those signals that are close to each other coordinated?
Yes. So before they actually, have the coordination online, they all have, within their controller cabinet, there's a controller cabinet in this picture here, they have all the identical type of hardware and software components to it. So they all have kind of share the same components to it. So they should definitely be installed and active first before they start. They put it online.
So they are installed, they are online, and they do work, is what you're saying?
They should be, yes, for sure.
Some audience members don't disagree with you, I'm noticing.
So there's 2 types, because we've talked to State Highway about this. Okay. There's the coordinated system, which is what he's talking about, which is supposedly what is in effect in Prince Frederick. Supposedly. And then there's an adaptive, where you don't have adaptive.
No, we don't.
Okay.
I just want to clarify that, because that's different, because that adjusts itself based on the signal.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, so clarifying that, so what they have out there, if it's not adaptive, is more of a set time of day schedule. So it's, during, like, say, the AM peak period type of frame, from from 6 to 9 a.m., they have this particular timing pattern, right? Then once from 9 to, 3 o'clock p.m., you'll have another pattern, and another pattern for the peak period.
So if I understand it correctly, or possibly the set pattern at 5:30 to 6:15 in the morning is if a person's traveling southbound, they catch every single light red?
No.
Because I've done that.
Sure, sure, yeah. I guess it's possible, for sure.
Right. So I'm just trying to figure out, when you have 3 lights in succession that you can all see at the same time.
Yep.
And all 3 turn red at the same time, and all 3 turn green virtually within seconds of each other.
Yeah.
And your light at the hospital turns green, and then your light at Fox Run turns red before you can get there because it was green when it turned green at the hospital.
Sure.
I don't see how the coordination works.
So that's one, again, I don't know the ins and outs of this particular coordinated system. It might be dated, and maybe it needs to be reevaluated to make sure it's re-optimized again.
I mean, it sounds good on paper and on
Yeah.
PowerPoint, I'll give you that.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway,
Well,
thank you.
and you gotta remember, there's obviously, in order to make this work effectively, you have to maintain it too. So I'm just not 100% sure if it's being adequately maintained or not. So, but this is sort of the whole, when, say, State Highway goes out there and they actually are evaluating these, based on volumes, they're going to make their adjustments. That's the type of thing they're trying to eliminate is some of these stop and go things. Try to make it progress as efficiently as possible. I just don't know if it's been looked at in a while or not. So it's hard for me to say.
I'm counting 8 lights with the new light, is that right, in the Prince Frederick Town Center along Route 4?
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And I would think because that's going online, they would definitely it'd be a good idea to go out there and make sure they're reevaluating things, especially with a new signal on board.
So
For sure.
every time we brought up the State Highway to evaluate this, they come back and say it is coordinated. However, when an emergency vehicle goes through and they kind of trigger the light to change, it throws the whole system off, and it
Yes.
could take multiple cycles for it to come back to where it's supposed to be. That's what we're told,
I've
but we
experienced that.
randomly bring this up probably at least once a year for them to evaluate it. And those are generally the responses we get.
And I could see that because obviously the emergency preemptions that are out there, it triggers as needed, right? And then obviously it'll happen whenever during the cycle length, and it might put it out of whack for sure. So there's definitely instances like that that'll happen. So. Okay. Just again, the next piece of this would go through just traffic impact analyses and just their requirements and sort of components to this. I'm going to just go through these real quickly. So as far as requirements to act for the need of having a traffic impact analysis, per Calvert County, is your proposed site requires 200 or more two-way trips per day, or a site with 20 or more peak hour trips per day. If it's on a state highway roadway, it's a little different. The state will look at it like sites with more than 50 peak hour trips. So the fact that we have state roads, you kind of have to look at both of them. So sort of the components of a study. So obviously the first piece are the traffic counts. So you want them turning the volumes at the intersections. Again, we're going to talk about the morning, evening peaks and any non-holiday times is when you actually perform these counts. Weekend counts for a certain development type, especially if they have a lot of activity on the weekends. From there, we use the counts. We'll evaluate the existing conditions. Again, the corridor, the intersections, how they're operating. We'll review the signal times that are out there now. Do some field observations of looking at cues, the delays, and things like that. Just observations to calibrate this sort of analysis. So this synchro model we're developing for this is sort of, it requires some calibration. We also look at safety as well, looking at any crash data.
And there's still language in the regs that allows the Director of Public Works to expand that?
Yes.
So after we have the existing conditions sort of evaluated, we're going to look at the background existence. So this is whenever that proposed development, when we know it's planned to be built and online, that's sort of your future build, your future year that we're looking at. So we're going to look at both the future no build condition, which is what the background condition is. So what at that year, like say 2028, if this development wasn't there, this is what sort of the traffic conditions would be like. So obviously you're going to kind of grow the volumes to a certain annual growth rate, add any approved developments that are in the area that may impact the future volumes too, and then kind of reevaluate the capacity analysis with that. Then we kind of looked at taking that background, that future no build, add the proposed build conditions to it. So you add the trips to that proposed condition to it, and then reevaluate it. Same thing. So it's good. Look at the future volumes, how those sites, the trips are distributed throughout the network, and also looking at the capacity analysis. Then from there, we'll see what the actual true impacts of that, the operational impacts, safety impacts of that proposed development come together with any the analysis results, any particular mitigation needs from any of the adverse impacts. Again, if there's a level of service that's changed from, if our county road from a C to a D, that something like that type of impact needs to be mitigated, and they'll provide the mitigation, proposed mitigations to do that in your recommendations. And with that, that's pretty much what I have.
Thank you, gentlemen. Willing to take questions?
Sure, we got time.
Good question.
Gentlemen, are you willing to ask questions?
Sure. You covered a lot of stuff in here on how the data is processed, how the data is put through the system in order to show what's happening and to show what might be happening in the future or something like that. What I didn't hear, and if you said it, I missed it, but how do you farm the data or source the data? Where does the actual route numbers come from to say, we know for a fact that on this day during these hours that this is how many vehicles pass through this intersection and how long they waited?
So, yeah, again, so it's all based on data that was recent data. So again, the traffic counts is where we kind of determine what the volumes are. Obviously existing conditions, because that's what we have. We're able to, grow the numbers to futures based on some growth rates, just based on historical growth trends that we see in the area. The proposed, conditions, the data as far as the number of trips that are for that are determined based on the ITE trip generation manual for a particular type of land uses. So for any sort of specific type of land use, they have a whole database of general averages and trends of how many trips those create. So that's kind of how a lot of the volumes are sort of developed.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out if I can ask a question a different way.
Okay.
Where does the data, the original data that says this many vehicles travel through this intersection during this time frame, where does that, how is that data sourced or farmed?
So that's the traffic count. So we actually physically have someone out there, with a little board counting the cars going through the intersection by movement.
Okay,
Does that answer your question?
it does.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, that I was just trying to figure out where the source route data
I
came
see, I
from.
understand.
So that's a person on the side of the road in a car.
Yep. A
hitting
lot of times
buttons on
now,
there.
that for safety, they do video now too. They'll put a video camera out there to record it, and then they'll count them later. That's
Okay.
more and more what you see these days.
Gotcha.
And they got AI these days, so they're actually have, the computers can go and start developing. I haven't seen it yet myself, but that's the future. Is
Well, if we don't have adaptive signals, we're not gonna have AI traffic counters.
yeah.
The-
Adaptive signals are good for certain types of corridors.
Okay,
too, so.
and regarding, you were talking about, let's say there's 200 trips per day that are going to be added based on XY development.
Yeah.
So if a residential development XY goes in place, there's gonna be estimated 200 trips per day. In your, I can't remember the name of it, but the program that you said analyzes everything all the way out, to this and that. Are those 200 trips or a portion of those 200 trips also added to, let's say if it's Prince Frederick, are they added to the traffic count as far as ways Dunkirk and Solomons?
Yes, so so there's a certain study area for your traffic impact study, and it'll capture any adjacent intersections. It could be the ones like Dunkirk per se. And what happens is, when you determine the number of proposed sites, you end up distributing those volumes accordingly. And they're assigned to a certain route. Let's just say that. It could go through the one study intersection for sure. So it all kind of depends on how you distribute it.
But it does count as far, up to all ends of the county, not just a 1 or 2 mile radius.
So per the study, it is pretty much based on your established study area. So your 1 or 2 mile radius is how they study it.
So being a bedroom community, the
Yeah.
200 possible that's added in this particular area, Prince Frederick,
Yeah.
most likely is still going through Dunkirk.
It will definitely, yeah, agree. That it would be. As far as that study, whether it's actually going to study the impacts of that particular one further down the road, it all depends on how that study areas established and which intersections were deemed to be studied.
So basically, when we look at the study area, our APFO ordinance kind of defines what the study area can be, which is, our Commissioner Freeland asked, is it still up to the Director of Public Works to expand, let's just say, the study area for the traffic study? Generally, we keep them within a certain distance. So if we're looking at a development in Prince Frederick, generally we don't look at intersections in Dunkirk when we're studying the traffic in Prince Frederick because it's so far out. If you look at, let's just say a 200 townhome community in Prince Frederick, that traffic from that is going to get washed out by the time it gets to Dunkirk. You're not going to notice the difference in the study itself. So we kind of limit it to the intersections within sometimes a 1 mile radius and sometimes we shrink them down. Maybe we could expand it. When we did, I think it was the Prince Frederick Assisted Living, which is right on Army Road, we expanded that scope to a little more intersections, which is why the 231 and Route 4 intersection was in there, and I think we even extended that up to Stokely just to see how it would affect it. But we're generally not going to push it outside that far to say the Dunkirk lights, because by then it comes down to you're estimating the traffic leaving that community and which direction they're headed. So it's an estimate anyways, because like John said, we developed a future based on the ITE, which is the International Transportation Engineering Guide, that has counts based on studies they've done, whether it be 1 study or 100 studies, depending on the use. And that defines to us how many trips are gonna come from, whether it's the AM peak, the PM peak, and then it's up to the traffic engineer to determine, based on the layout, of how we estimate they're gonna leave the site. We know how many's gonna leave the site, but it doesn't define is 100% headed north, or is only 50% headed north and 50% headed south. So that's where it kind of gets to more of an estimation in the traffic study, which is why I think a lot of us view that maybe the studies aren't the most accurate, but once again, you're looking at an estimate. So what they actually do in real world might not be what we estimate. We don't know what they're gonna do in the real world until they're built and they're actually doing the movement, because just because you live in Prince Frederick doesn't mean you're driving to DC for a job. You could be driving to Lexington Park for a job. But we have to estimate as the engineer what we think they might be doing, which does kind of skew it a little bit, but there's not a better way to do it than we're aware of.
Well, but if you've
Mr.
got,
St. Jerry, I've got a recommendation though, and that is the geographic bounds of the study is, as you note, really critical. For the Armory Square and the Magnolia Ridge studies, those studies actually were geographically bounded in a way that excluded looking at the impact of traffic on Stokely Road. And so typically DPW goes out to the first major intersection or so. And in the case of those studies, that criteria excluded the intersection that's really the most problematic in Prince Frederick. So what I'd like to suggest is, would it make sense to have a policy where all of the intersections within a town center are included in a study for a development going into that town center or near it? Over.
Possibly, and I think if we look at the current APFO ordinance that we have now, I think it gives us the ability to do that. Because I want to say it says within 1 mile radius of the site, and I think that probably covered the majority of the intersections within Prince Frederick.
Yeah.
Plus, it gives the director their ability to expand it. I'm not sure why the scope was tightened down on those two. I'd have to go back and look, because those were done many years ago. But I know that's why we expanded to multiple intersections on the Prince Frederick Assisted Living, which is why I reached out to 231. I think we reached out to Stokely on that also.
The reason I dwell on Stokely is because that's the intersection that really gets the most citizen complaints. And so another question I have is, are there SHA or DPW studies that look at what it might take to mitigate the problems at Stokely Road so that it becomes a C or better intersection? Because until we do that, the APFO is going to continue to kick in, and that's going to put constraints that on development that we may not want to continue. Over.
So to answer, there has been studies done by State Highway for improvements at the Stokely Route 4 intersection. Basically, there's a phase think it's 5A and 5B, plans that they have out there to basically expand and widen Route 4 from Fox Run through Stokely, like they've done from Fox Run to, I believe it is Oldfield. I know that it's currently one of our top priorities for the Board of County Commissioners with our letter to State Highway we send every year for them to construct and finish out those next phases. And we keep pushing on, at least for the past 2 to 3 years, it's been on our list. We keep getting pushback from State Highway that they don't have funding to move forward. So
Yeah.
that's the answer. They need to basically finish the improvements because it would give you 3 lanes, which would allow more traffic to go through that intersection. When we've talked to
As I
State
understand
Highway,
it, it's 3 lanes up from the south to Stokely Road. But some of the big problems are the southbound commute during PM rush hour where things are backing up sometimes all the way to Huntingtown. So that fix won't fix that particular problem, I don't think.
well, so phase 5B of that is the southbound lane expanding out to 3 lanes as you come into
Wow,
Prospect
okay.
intersection. So it would, because you'd be allowed to get more traffic through it in the phase that the light's there. We just need to keep pushing State Highway to move forward and get that further up on their list so construction can start. I believe they still have, it might be around 50% design plans, so they still gotta finish out the design plans. Probably require right-of-way and easements that they're gonna need, and then move into construction. But until we can get, you know, the state to fund the project and move forward, it's a tall order to ask for, you know, minor developers in Calvert County to address that. But we need help pushing State Highway, so that's where we're at. If you
Right.
all wanna help write letters to State Highway, that would be greatly appreciative.
If we could go to adaptive signals throughout Prince Frederick on the 2-4 corridor, would that alleviate the other failing intersection problems?
So the adaptives, so the answer is probably, adaptives is really good for when you have non-regular peak period congestion. So what it does is during non-peak hours, it has the ability to adjust it to based on whatever the needs are during that time. During peak hours, like your morning and evening peak, your timings are at its maximum because you're trying to push through that flow. So the adaptive actually wouldn't really matter for those particular time periods. It's for the other time periods throughout the day that make them more efficient. So a lot of times adaptive corridors are good for when you have little minor peaks in between. Like say if you have a school in a nearby that has a sort of a drop off arrival time period, you want to kind of adjust that type of thing. So.
Okay, thank you.
To go back a little bit, 10, 15, 20 years ago, or over the last 10 to 15, 20 years, Solomon's is not, the area right at Solomon's and right there is not seeing a massive population growth. However, the traffic going across the bridge is tremendously worse now than it was 10 to 15 years ago. And that's not coming from people in a 1 or 2 mile radius or a scope of what you're saying a traffic study is. Same thing applies at Dunkirk. There hasn't been any major construction in Dunkirk adding major population in Dunkirk or right near Dunkirk within a mile of those lights. But yet 10, 15, 20 years ago, the traffic was significantly less coming through Dunkirk than it is today. If you were saying we don't have a way to look at the data, if you go back and look at how many trips per day were going through Dunkirk 10, 15 years ago, you look at how many are going through today, you extrapolate that data, cross-reference it to how many new constructions you've got in the county, there's your data on how many go north. You can do the same with 231, you can do the same with Route 4 on the south end. That will show you the percentages or an estimate of the percentages. If you put 100 more trips in, this is how many you're gonna see going north, this is approximately how many you're gonna see going west, and this is probably how many you're gonna see going south. Food for thought.
It's more of the regional traffic growth, not the local growth that's really the issue, it sounds like.
I get it,
that
but
you're seeing.
as Mr. Weems said, we're a bedroom community. A lot of people commute north, a lot of people commute south, a lot of people commute west. If we continue to add for the last however many years, we've added development, but we've ignored what happens 10 miles up the road or 20 miles up the road or 20 miles south. And again, I'm not saying that every developer should be responsible for those tremendous costs, but we're the peninsula. We got 3 ways in and out. And if those get clogged up, they're gonna get clogged up. So there has to be, unless there's fixes in Solomons and fixes in Dunkirk and fixes in Benedict, there is a finite amount of people that we can put into this place and not have major or more major problems, is I think what I'm trying to get at. It goes beyond the mile, is my point.
Gentlemen, any other questions?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Who out there doing TIAs? Obviously, the contractor for a developer,
Correct.
State Highway.
They have done some, but they're few and far between.
Does the county do any?
We have not in many years. I think we had a traffic consultant on board when we did the transportation plan 5 years ago, with planning and zoning, that did kind of a rough overview, but not get down to dirty numbers like we do for development.
So the TIAs that are performed, is that information shareable among the user groups?
Yeah, so when we get the TIAs at Public Works, we have the ability to share them and provide, if there's a new development coming in, like when, I keep going back to Prince Frederick Assistant Living, because it's the most recent one. We provided them information from the traffic studies from the region, so they knew what background development was coming also that wasn't currently online, so they could also add that into their traffic counts. But once again, it's still projected because they're not necessarily existing traffic yet, it's just projected volume.
But it is a shareable document that other folks can use.
Correct. I mean, anybody can put in a request for information act to Public Works and we can issue it out no other way than through that.
Thank you.
And we all set? Gentlemen, thank you so much for your help. We appreciate it.
Thank you. That brings us to item 7. Before we go to item 7, Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
It was
ma'am.
asked, do you want to take a 2-minute break for Dr. Howler?
It's a good idea.
Yes, 2-minute break would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, we
Away
will
we go.
resume our regular meeting. That brings us to item 7, applications for site plan review and action. Item A, we have SPR 143255, Armory Pavilion.
Thank you, Tamara. Can you hear me okay, Commissioners?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Excellent. There we go. Good evening. My name's Christine Finnemore. I'm a principal planner with the Department of Planning and Zoning, and I'll be presenting the site plan for the project known as SPR 143255 Armory Pavilion. The site plan was submitted and accepted by the Technical Evaluation Group, also known as TEG, at their regular meeting in December of 2024. Agencies have reviewed the site plan for compliance with the Calvert County Comprehensive Plan, the Calvert County Zoning Ordinance as amended, the Town Center Zoning Ordinance for Prince Frederick as amended, and other county ordinances and regulations. Here you see an overview of the location of the property. We are in Prince Frederick. Property can be found on tax map 24, parcels 479 and 769, for a total acreage of 4.86 acres. The property is located in the Newtown sub-area of Prince Frederick with frontage along Armory Road, which is a public and county road. And on the map you see the property, 2 parcels highlighted in yellow. Here you see the 2023 aerial photography with the property again located, highlighted in yellow. This is a color exhibit of one of the sheets out of the site development plan. Site plan application proposes to redevelop the former location of the Prince Frederick National Guard Armory to include a publicly owned and operated open-air pavilion, just over 13,500 square feet, facade and interior updates to the existing storage building, just under 5,000 square feet, for a total building square footage of 18,298 square feet. The proposed use on the site is a combination of public or government building as well as public park and recreation area. Site improvements also include green space, a monument out front, seating areas, parking, stormwater management for the site. Parking calculations have been evaluated for the proposed development with a total number of 64 spaces required. And a chart showing the parking requirements is included in the site plan on the cover sheet. And you were provided in your packet several sheets out of the site plan set. It is sizable, it is 35 pages long, and in the interest of file size, I did not provide everything if you, but I do have copies with me tonight if you wanted to look at them. A traffic impact analysis, also known as a TIA, was submitted to the Department of Public Works for review and was approved in May of 2025. Improvements to Armory Road were previously approved and are shown on the site plan for the pavilion. The project has been awarded 4 state grants through the Department of Housing and Community Development and Department of Commerce for several stages of the project to include demolition, design, and construction. I also did want to mention that Forest Conservation Act requirements are being met on site with long-term retention. And architectural approval was received in September of 2024 for the project. Here you see the building perspectives for the open air pavilion. These were received with the site plan submittal. At the top of this is the south elevation of the pavilion, and at the bottom of the slide is the west elevation of the pavilion. And these were included in your packet as well. Here is, it doesn't look like this now, but there's an existing building on site currently used for storage, and it is going to be reused, add restrooms and continue storage, and some space that is going to be flexible. And here's that building, the west elevation as well as south elevation, and the floor plan. At this time, planning staff recommend approval of SPR 143255, site plan for Armory Pavilion, with the following conditions and attached comments. Those are included in the staff report and attached to the staff report. There are three conditions in the staff report, including approval of site plan SPR 143255 by the Planning Commission shall constitute a conditional approval of the proposed development as to the character, use intensity, and compliance with applicable plans and ordinances, but does not guarantee final approval of the detailed site development plan. Condition 2, all outstanding agency comments shall be addressed prior to final site plan approval. And condition 3 is just the timing of the Planning Commission approval. SPR 143255 shall expire 24 months after it has received conditional approval by the Planning Commission unless final site plan has been approved, excuse me. So for the Planning Commission, the next steps, you may consider approval with conditions as listed by staff, approval with modification to those conditions, deferral of the project, or denial of the project. In your packet, you have attached the agency comments that have been received through the review process. Those were received up through Plan 2, as well as, like I mentioned, several pages out of the site plan set. This is the detailed site plan, and it's an engineering document. It's 35 pages long, so we did not include the whole thing. The site plan application and building elevations. I will entertain any questions at this time. I also did want to mention that staff from Economic Development, Public Works, as well as a commissioner is in the room. I knew I was missing one. Parks and Recreation are in the room to answer any questions appropriate for those agencies.
Thank you, Christina.
Yes, sir.
Commissioners?
The memorial site out front, that is where the intended bricks that were salvaged from the original army will be used? The original armory, when it was torn down?
That might be answered by someone else in the room. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think so.
We have a volunteer.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. Jared Cosgrove, Director of Public Works. To answer your question, yes, that is the plan. We kept, I want to say, close to 600 bricks, and we're going to try to incorporate them in there, in that memorial. I believe also, if you look at this imagery, you see the bush in the middle with the concrete band going around it. There's also words inscribed in there that are related to the National Guard.
Very good. Thank you. And you might want to stay there.
Was the bronze plaque that was in the original building, was that saved? Is that gonna be placed on the site?
Well, we did save that. I don't think we found a location for it yet. If so, it might be in the garage part where we remodel it. I don't know if there's a spot on the actual pavilion itself, but I do recall saving it.
Hold still.
One question, Joe. Have all you given any consideration to memorial bricks where people could get names or whatever on them and have them there?
I don't think we have, but I don't know if we're against the idea. I'd have to talk to those above me to see if there's an issue.
Okay.
All right. And on the drawings, it appears that there's retaining wall and curb and gutter at the back of the property. Slide 4 would be the best one in that. And it looks to me like there's it doesn't look to me. There is a curb and gutter that points toward the back of the property, as well as a fence and a gate toward the back of the property. On the top of it looked like there was about a 15-foot drop over the course of about 30 or 40 foot off that retaining wall. What is the opening there for, and what are any future plans, if any, for that property in the back?
So if you look at, I guess you'd call it the northeast corner, that's where the tallest section of the wall is, adjacent to what is, I think it's the Foxconn Professional Center now. The opening you're talking about in the center, that's kind of where the retaining wall ties into existing grade. So we kind of feathered it out like that because it works better for tying in. The gate and all is there for more for maintenance to go back. There was discussion in the initial phase. Back in that location, we could put a secondary pavilion that was, I think it was like 30 by 30. That's not currently in the design plans just because of lack of funding, more or less, and not the need for it right now.
Thank you.
Planning Commission members, the engineer is also online, would like to speak speak.
Thank you, ma'am. Gentlemen, other questions?
Tony, can you unmute?
Yeah, sorry. Good evening, everybody. The wall's curved like that as well to allow, there's a storm drain system that runs through that area. So it allows, Department of Public Works to be able to get there and maintain that system without having to impact the retaining wall.
Tony, can you identify yourself, please? Sorry.
I'm sorry. My name's Anthony Oleksian. I'm Principal Engineer with COA Barrett, Prince Frederick, Maryland. So, in the fence, because of its height, Mr. Gadway, it also has a safety rail as the fencing that you're seeing there, to keep anybody from falling over it. And then the gate is there to still allow access for any future development in the rear, and again, for access to that storm drain.
Thank you.
Traffic signals at the intersection. Will there be traffic light there? Where the shopping center and everything's coming out in one
Which
There-
intersection?
on Armory Road?
The
You got
proposed-
crosswalks and everything across there, but it's directly across from the entrance to,
Correct, so with the Army Road improvement that's being done with Armory Square, the road's getting a little wider through there. There'll be curb and gutter along Army Road, and that intersection you see from the access road coming from Army Square Commercial Development to Army Road itself will be a three-way stop and crosswalks to allow citizens to commute, pedestrians to walk from the pavilion over to the shopping center or vice versa if they need to. So that ought to be I guess you call it an unsignalized intersection, so it'll be a three-way stop.
okay, but there will be crosswalk lights for walk or don't walk.
We were not proposing them, just
Okay.
crosswalk itself.
Okay.
Any other questions, gentlemen?
Just reading through, I know you got some comments about circulation on the drive aisles. Looking at the picture where you're gonna have food trucks that will be coming there, and I presume farmers will be coming there selling their stuff on the weekends. It's all about movement within that one section where you're gonna have trucks, people standing there ordering, people waiting for food, and cars coming in right behind them and parking. I'm just, common sense to me, that is an area of concern, and apparently somebody else is noting some of that concern within the groups.
So, to address that, it is a concern, and when the food trucks are there, that, I guess you call the entrance to the southern part of the property, is more of access for the food trucks and the vendors. However, the public will be coming through the main entrance a little further north. That'll be visiting the center for both the farmer's market or the food trucks themselves.
But there's, so that entrance going towards where the food trucks are for the parking there, that's gonna be open.
So that parking adjacent to the building is more or less there for the vendors themselves, for the way the food, or the farmer's market operate. That's for them to back their vehicles up to unload to their tables, and they can pretty much sell off their truck. So that's more doing setup first thing.
So that section is being looked at as for when you're doing events, stuff, or selling stuff. The car parking could be on the left is gonna be used for the
Correct.
vendors.
That's the thought. That's our plan is today.
And then the driveway in the back,
So that's there for basically the food trucks to go in and out. So when we don't have food trucks there, then both sides will be used. But when the farmer's market open and then when there's food trucks, that'll be kind of sectioned off just for the vendors themselves, not the public to be going in and out.
Okay.
But we still need a drive aisle for, emergency vehicles and everybody
Right.
else to get in and out.
Just to add onto the conversation, Commissioner McQueen, this layout is one of several that were reviewed at a sketch level of detail by planning staff over the last, I'd say, year. And it's two-way in all areas, and if there's access management, depending on the type of event, for example, that JR described, you may not want to have the public parking on, I'm gonna call it the
south end.
southeast end of the site. But if there are no food trucks and folks are just coming to check out the site or who knows what, that there is two-way circulation. If they address circulation within the site, depending on the event itself, I think this layout works pretty well. Not a traffic engineer. But it's the
But you're shutting it off when you're doing the selling and the people are milling around in that zone.
There's a logical
that
way
answers.
that you can have vehicular circulation within that site with this layout that works, yes,
Yeah.
for different types of events.
Who's responsible for managing the facility?
There you go. That's the next one.
Well, it's gonna vary, depending on use, but right now we're looking at it probably gonna be more housed with Parks and Rec, with some insight from economic development, because they manage the farmer's market and stuff around that. So it's gonna bounce back and forth, but right now we're looking at Parks and Rec's probably gonna manage it the majority of the time, economic will share, and of course, general services and public works will end up assisting with managing the grounds in the building.
Can I ask a question of Parks and Rec? Could you come forward, please? Identify yourself, please.
Good morning, or good evening, actually, sorry. My name is Kristen Perry, and I'm the Special Facilities Division Chief.
Have you developed a plan for this yet, since you'll be managing it?
Yes.
Okay.
So obviously JR had mentioned food trucks and farmers market, things like that. We're anticipating possibly doing some events, maybe even some rentals if there are residents who want to rent out the pavilion. There's also the possibility of having a seasonal ice rink that's going to go underneath the open air pavilion in the winter months.
Okay.
A couple different options that we have talked about.
Great. Thank you.
Gentlemen, any other questions, comments? Anyone like to make a motion?
I would, after considering the entire record, including presentations of staff, the staff report, the proposed detailed site development plan, the application, and all documentation submitted by the applicant, all agency comments, the applicable law, I move that the Planning Commission approves the detailed site development plan application in the case of SPR 143255 with the conditions recommended by staff and as contained in the staff report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second from Commissioner Freeland. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Are there any against? Motion carries 7-0. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Burry, did you vote on that?
He has logged off.
He's logged off, so we have 6-0 on that one. Commissioner Burry is done. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Commissioner.
Thank you, Chris. That brings us to item 8, major subdivision applications for preliminary review and action. We do not have any on the agenda tonight. Item 9, long-range planning. Item A, Chapter 3, Dunkirk Town Center Master Plan Update, the Master Plan of Town Centers.
Good evening, Commissioners. I am Kat Lockwood, Planner 2 with the Department of Planning and Zoning. I'm here to talk about Chapter 3, Dunkirk Town Center Master Plan Update. Background. On February 19th, 2025, the Planning Commission endorsed the format for the Master Plan of Town Centers to streamline the update process and prioritize revising the oldest town center master plans first. Draft chapters are currently being prepared for Chapter 1, Town Centers, Chapter 2, which is Prince Frederick Town Center Master Plan, and Chapter 3, Dunkirk Town Center Master Plan. Chapter 1 provides background information applicable to all town centers, while Chapter 2 and 3 include updates specific to the Prince Frederick and Dunkirk Town Centers respectively. The Department of Planning and Zoning presented draft Chapter 3 Dunkirk Town Center Master Plan Update to the Planning Commission for review on May 21st, 2025. Discussion. The Department of Planning and Zoning requests comments from the Planning Commission on the draft Chapter 3 Dunkirk Town Center Master Plan Update and seeks guidance on initiating the 60-day comment period. Conclusion/recommendation. The Planning Commission may choose to take one of the following actions. The Planning Commission may direct staff to initiate the 60-day comment period. 2, the Planning Commission may direct staff to revise the draft plan and seek guidance to initiate the 60-day comment period in July 2025.
Hi, I'm Tay Harris. I'm the long-range planner for the Department of Planning and Zoning. Before we have further discussion, I would just like to add, please, that there were a few changes made to the draft plan from the last time we presented it to you for review. You asked for us to address 2 data points in the master plan draft. One was the unemployment rate. So the unemployment rate was originally obtained from the U.S. Census Bureau's census designated place profile webpage on the front page of it. So they have a page that profiles and presents all this data, all different types of data. And that's where that information was obtained. Once I looked into the specific data table of DP03, the data indicated that the unemployment rate was less than 1%. So what was presented on the profile page seems to be incorrect. It was revised in the plan. The other data point that we were asked to look at was the median income for Solomon's CDP, Census Designated Place. And the reason why it's lower, it appears to be because there are several retirees that live in that area, and then also that there are several individuals reporting their median income as opposed to households where you could have dual income, and that lowers the median income for that town center. So that also, there's been placed a note in that table indicating why that number appears to be low. Then one last thing, that there was a recommendation for a tree preservation goal in the Dunkirk plan, and that was removed. While it makes sense to put it in the Prince Frederick Town Center master plan because of the Parkers Creek headwaters area, most of the forest cover in the Dunkirk area or town center is associated with forest conservation requirements and is along the edges of behind some shopping centers, the Dunkirk Park and Ride, and the Dunkirk District Park. So we took that recommendation out because it didn't really make sense for that town center. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
I do appreciate the unemployment rate change, and I would like to have the record reflect that the county commissioners do not get credit on dropping the unemployment rate from 35% to less than 1% in 1 month. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Okay, we received this evening some comments on the Dunkirk Town Center Master Plan.
Yeah. Yes.
And I haven't really had a chance to review them, but is this in the same format as your response to the comments for the Prince Frederick, where different color font is your response? There's 3 different colors. There's black, red, and blue.
Okay, so it's not the same format that was in response to the comments for the Prince Frederick Town Center Master Plan. Instead, due to the short turnaround time, and really the answers could be brief for the Dunkirk comments, unless you wanted more expansion on them, or once you have time to look at it. But I wanted to respond to them quickly for tonight's meeting so that you could be informed. And then Prince Frederick, they actually were more involved anyways. So they were in a different color font. But if you see, an email should have been sent to you all that enumerated just my quick response to the comments. They were sent at 1 o'clock today.
Okay, thank you.
Gentlemen, any other questions or comments? Would anyone like to make a motion?
Yes, sir. I move that we direct staff to forward copies of the draft Chapter 3 Dunkirk Town Center Master Plan to the necessary jurisdictions for this required 60-day comment period.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a second?
Second.
And we have a second from Commissioner Freeland. All those in favor? Aye. Are there any against? We have 6-0. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much, ladies. We appreciate your help.
Thank you. That brings us to item B, Draft 2025 Calvert County, Maryland State Annual Report.
Hi, I'm Tay Harris. I'm the Long Range Planner with the Department of Planning and Zoning for Calvert County. And tonight I'm going to briefly discuss with you the draft 2025 Calvert County, Maryland Annual Report. Title 1-207 of the Land Use Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland requires local planning commissions to prepare, adopt, and file a report with the Maryland Department of Planning no later than July 1st of each year. The annual report compiles data for the calendar year of 2024. Title 1-207 also requires that the annual report be made available to the legislative body, enabling them to direct any necessary studies and other actions to support a viable planning and development process. A draft of the report is attached to this staff report for your review. A copy will be presented to the Calvert County Board of Commissioners for their consideration and use. So I'm going to briefly go over the data that is included in this report. I'd like to emphasize that this report focuses on indicators and information that applies to inside of the priority funding area versus outside of the priority funding area. So in 2024, there were 104 new residential permits issued. 52 were outside the priority funding area or PFA, and 52 were inside. In 2024, there were no text or zoning map amendments, and there were 9 approved minor subdivisions, 2 approved with recordation pending, and 7 recorded. There were no major subdivisions in 2022. There are also 18 approved and recorded site plans. There were 21 capital improvement projects that were funded as well. In addition, there were several activities that were implemented based on recommendations related in various plans, programs, and policies relating to green infrastructure, climate change, resilience, water and air quality, revitalization and infill, bicycle and pedestrian pathways planning. Highlights include the Calvert County Tree Coupon Program, the Local Preference Ordinance, climate change educational outreach via the Calvert County Flood Mitigation Plan Update, the Calvert County High Tide Flood Mitigation Update, property acquisition for Community Resources Hub on Main Street in Prince Frederick, stormwater management improvements and invasive species plant removal and native vegetative planting at several parks throughout the county, elevation of a repetitive lost property, demolition of 2 cliff properties, and the preparation of the Cove Point Trail Study. Furthermore, in the report is included a development capacity analysis. These capacity numbers were developed in 2018, and we're planning to update them this year. We are waiting for the zoning ordinance to pass. So that will be, the updated numbers will be included in next year's annual report. There are 22,371 residentially zoned acres with development capacity. 86% or 19,197 are located outside of the PFA. 3,174 or 14% are located inside the PFA. There are 6,563 residential parcels and lots with development capacity. 35% or 2,272 are located outside of the PFA. 4,291 or 65% are located inside the PFA. There are also 15,800 units with residential capacity, of which 18% or 2,775 are located outside the PFA, and 82% or 13,025 are located inside the PFA. The report also includes information on locally funded agricultural land preservation and local land use goal. In 2024, there were no new acres preserved using local agricultural land preservation funding. The Calvert County Comprehensive Plan indicates, or includes that there's a goal to preserve 40,000 acres, or 28.6% of the county's land area, with no time frame associated with this goal. As of December 31st, 2024, there were 32,639 acres preserved, representing 82% of the goal. Section 5 of the report includes measures and indicators for improved and recorded subdivisions. So again, there were 9 minor subdivisions approved, 4 of which are outside the PFA and 5 of which are inside the PFA. There were 20 lots and units approved. 9 of those are outside the PFA and 11 of those are inside the PFA. There were 90.38 gross acres of approved, or acres approved in the minor subdivisions. 68.08 acres were located outside the PFA and 22.29 acres were located inside the PFA. There were 85.006 net lot area in acres in total, and 62.76 acres were outside the PFA, while 22.29 acres were inside the PFA. In total, there were 99 residential units constructed in 2024, 55 of which were outside the PFA and 44 of which were inside the PFA. There were 17 total residential units demolished, 8 which were outside the PFA and 9 which were inside the PFA. And then there were a total of 17 residential units reconstructed and replaced, 8 which were outside the PFA and 9 which were inside the PFA. There were 20 total residential units approved as discussed before, and again there was a total of 85.06 acres. 9 units were outside the PFA, 11 units were inside the PFA, and then of those 85.06 acres, 62.76 acres were outside the PFA, while 22.29 acres were inside the PFA. And then we had 18 commercial site plans approved, 4 that were outside the PFA and 14 that were inside the PFA. This represented 208.32 gross acres, of which 121.11 acres were outside the PFA and 87.21 acres were inside the PFA. This represented a gross building area of 372,868 square feet, of which 5,065 square feet were outside the PFA and 345,301 were inside the PFA. Lastly, there were no subdivisions impacted by APF regulations in 2024. So in conclusion, the Planning Commission may choose to take one of the following actions. Adopt the draft 2025 Calvert County, Maryland State Annual Report as presented and directed, and direct staff to send the report to the Maryland Department of Planning and a copy to the Board of County Commissioners. 2, you can adopt the report with minor modifications and direct staff to send the report to the Maryland Department of Planning as well as to the Board of County Commissioners. 3, you can direct staff to make changes and remit the report for consideration at the next Planning Commission regular meeting. Are there any questions?
Thank you, ma'am.
I just have one comment.
Sir?
It's not a big deal, but actually the report's filed with the Board of County Commissioners, and then after the county commissioners look at it, then a copy is sent to MDP.
It's filed with the Board of County Commissioners and then a copy.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mattingly. Gentlemen, any questions or comments?
Mr. Magnet, can that be my motion, what you just said? Thank you, sir, appreciate it.
We have a motion?
Yes, that we send a copy to the Board of County Commissioners. Is that right, Mr. Magnet?
would just say, because the statute actually requires you to do two things, I would go with, and this is just suggested if you want, I move that we adopt and direct staff to file the draft 2025 Maryland State Annual Report. And the reason I would do it that way is because it's not till after it's filed with the BOCC that the local jurisdiction, the county, has the requirement to forward that copy up to MDP.
Very well. Thank you. I move that we adopt and direct staff to file the draft 2025 Maryland State Annual Report.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a universal second. Commissioner Gadboy's closest. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Are there any against? We have a 6-0. Thank you, Becky. All righty. Thank you so much. We appreciate all your help tonight.
Yes.
All right, that brings us to item 10, items for discussion and/or action. Item 10A, map amendment 2501, rezoning requests for zoning map amendment.
Okay, good evening, commissioners.
Good evening, folks.
My name is Will Hager. I'm Planner 3 with the Department of Planning and Zoning, and with me to my left is Rachel O'Shea, Deputy Director of Zoning. And we've got a lot to go over this evening, so I'm just going to dive right into this presentation. So we're here today to present an application for a zoning map amendment that we have received. The properties subject to the zoning map amendment application include 136 East Chesapeake Road and 150 East Chesapeake Beach Road, or Chesapeake Road, excuse me. The property at 136 East Chesapeake Road is currently zoned rural commercial. The property at 150 East Chesapeake Road is currently zoned rural neighborhood district, and the existing uses at the following properties are 136 East Chesapeake Road, automobile filling station, and 150 East Chesapeake Road, single-family dwelling. The proposed zoning for the subject properties in this application is Town Center Core District for both parcels. The Owings Town Center zoning ordinance describes the core district as the intent within this district is to allow for a variety of complementary uses appropriate to the scale and traffic volume of a regional thoroughfare, but adjusted to the village scale of the Owings area and to promote and sustain commercial development. The proposed use of the property is an enhancement to the existing automobile filling station at 136 East Chesapeake Road and expanded onto 150 East Chesapeake Road. Automobile filling station is not a permitted use in the rural commercial district. The existing filling station is a non-conforming use. And if the rezoning request is approved, the proposed development would be in conformance with the requirements, regulations, and conditions set forth in the Calvert County zoning ordinance, which permits automobile filling stations as a conditional use in the Owings Town Center Core Subdistrict. On this slide, we're looking at the current zoning of the area around Owings Town Center. The parcels circled in the middle are the subject properties. And on this slide, we're looking at what the zoning in the same area would look like if the zoning map amendment were to be approved. And on this slide, you can see the delineation of the sub-districts within Owings Town Center as they exist today. Those sub-districts include the core district, the village district, and the edge district. And on this slide, we're looking at the future land use map of the Owings area from the comprehensive plan. In the comprehensive plan, the Owings Town Center boundary is proposed to be expanded to include additional properties north of Maryland 260 and east of Maryland 770. The proposed rezoning would enable the expansion and renovation of the existing automobile filling station. The applicant proposes to demo the existing gas station and single-family detached dwelling and redevelop the subject property with a new, modern, and better designed facility. The proposed renovation would enable the installation of modern and improved landscaping, lighting, and stormwater management facilities, an upgraded septic system, better on-site circulation, safer entrances, and other aesthetic improvements. And on this slide, we have an image of the elevation drawing that the proposed development included in the application. This is a more up-to-date version than what was presented earlier at the work session with the BOCC in April. The updated elevations have more brick compared to the previous elevations. And on this slide, we have an image of the concept plan of the proposed development. And the subject property is a focal point of the existing commercial activity in Owings Town Center. As depicted in the comprehensive plan, this is the only major intersection within both the current and the future Owings Town Center. And Maryland State Highway Administration traffic counts from 2023 indicate an average daily traffic volume of 7,045 vehicles per day along MD 260 as compared to 7,971 average daily traffic volume in 2013. So on the next two slides, we have the applicant's justification for this rezoning request. The current rural commercial zoning of 136 East Chesapeake Beach Road reflects the historic use of the property, which has existed since before the county's town center concept. The existing primary structure was constructed in 1970. Changing the zoning designation of the subject property to town center core would support the redevelopment of the existing automobile filling station and is consistent with the goals and intentions of the comprehensive plan. Although the existing use of the 150 East Chesapeake Road is residential, the appropriate zoning of the property should have been considered in the context of the surrounding properties and the future land use to conform with the comprehensive plan rather than placing it in a holding zone which is not reflective of the plan's intent for the surrounding properties. And by designating the subject property in the rural commercial and rural neighborhood district zones during the comprehensive rezoning, the existing facts were not considered. The actual character and use of the property, as well as the property's location in an area designated for future development, is more consistent with the town center core designation. Reasonably foreseeable trends contemplated by the comprehensive plan and supported by the existing facts and nature of the subject property were not considered. And retaining the rural commercial zoning for the 136 East Chesapeake Beach Road property and rezoning the 150 East Chesapeake Beach Road property to RND was a mistake to fact because the RC and RND zoning designations inhibit the type of development envisioned in the county's comprehensive plan. So this work session was for informational purposes. Staff is planning on proceeding with the public adoption process and we'll be scheduling a joint public hearing with the Board of County Commissioners at a future date. Are there any questions on this subject?
Well, I'm a little curious. We had a drop in traffic there. We don't usually see that happen. Do we have any reasoning behind that, or do we have any knowledge of what might have caused the? That's almost a 15% decline in traffic volume.
I think there can be. I'm not an expert in traffic studies, but I think that there can be some variability in terms of the luck of the
when
cars.
You count.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not sure what the explanation could be.
Thank you. Gentlemen, comments?
Yes, right now this is non-conforming, right?
The automobile filling station is not a conforming use.
Okay. What information can you provide on the property right there at 2 and 260 that's formerly pharmacy and doctor's office? There were plans to do something with that, similar to this, I remember, so.
The
that property's been vacant for a number of years. At one point, I know Royal Farms was looking
Yes,
at going there. I have not heard or know of any progress of that
They
moving
have
forward.
withdrawn their application, and then I think that there is someone else looking at the property for possible medical building.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mhm.
That's all I got.
Any other questions at this time?
Well said. And you don't need anything from us at this time, right, Will?
No, we're not looking for anything. This was an informational presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the next item, 10B, Calvert County zoning ordinance, proposed text amendments 2502 through 2511.
Okay, we're gonna begin with some background. A comprehensive rewrite and update of the zoning ordinance was adopted earlier this year and came into effect March 1st, 2025. Text amendments are being proposed to address recent changes made to state law, bring the zoning ordinance in alignment with updates currently in process to the agricultural preservation rules and regulations, and to address a few outstanding issues not addressed with the recent zoning ordinance update. So with this presentation, we're going to be reviewing the proposed text amendments 2502 through 2512. So first, text amendment 2502 proposes to revise the definition of retaining wall to make clear that it doesn't include walls less than 36 inches in height. Anything less than 36 inches isn't considered structurally suitable for retainment. So this is really about making clear distinction between walls that are constructed specifically for retainment, which must meet certain requirements like setbacks and are inspected, and smaller walls used for things like landscaping. The amendments for the next two slides are proposing to remove provisions from the zoning ordinance that we believe are more appropriate for the agricultural preservation rules and regulations. The provisions on this slide specifically address the Agricultural Preservation Advisory Board. These are provisions that we only included in the zoning ordinance because for the time being, if they weren't in the zoning ordinance, they wouldn't have been written down anywhere. But now that we're making progress towards adopting the updated agricultural preservation rules and regulations, we no longer believe we need to include these in the zoning ordinance going forward. And same comments on this slide as the previous slide. These are provisions addressing preservation areas and APDs that we believe are more appropriate for inclusion in the agricultural preservation rules and regulations. And the revisions proposed for landfill land clearing debris are in the same spirit, making sure the zoning ordinance is not in conflict with the agricultural preservation rules and regulations. Under the proposed revisions, the conditions for APDs would be as follows. On land that is designated as an APD, only debris originating on the APD are permitted. And on land that is designated as an APD, the landfill can cover no more than 5% of the APD and shall not be visible from a public right-of-way. And the amendment on this slide just makes clear that landfill land clearing debris would be a conditional use in APDs going forward. The amendment to sand, gravel, or mineral extraction makes clear that in APD's approval, the Agricultural Preservation Advisory Board is required. And the amendment here is changing this use from requiring a special exception from the Board of Appeals to just being a conditional use in APDs, with one of the conditions being approval of the Agricultural Preservation Advisory Board. We felt that requiring property owners to also get BOA approval was redundant and unnecessary. This next text amendment, 2504, proposes to relax some of the regulations regarding uses in APDs. The amendment proposed on this slide would allow bed and breakfast facilities on APDs as long as the dwelling in which the facility operates was constructed prior to March 1st, 2025. And in addition to allowing bed and breakfast facilities as a conditional use in APDs, this amendment would also allow food trucks as a conditional use in APDs beyond those already allowed as accessory uses to events. And this text amendment 2505 makes it clear that if a use is not listed or does not fall within one of the general categories as determined by the zoning officer, it is not permitted either by right or special exception in any district. This text amendment 2506 proposes to allow garden center or farm supply stores in the farm and forest and rural community districts with the condition that the combined gross floor area of all buildings supporting the use be limited to 7,500 square feet. And the 7,500 square foot threshold was chosen because greater than 7,500 square feet would trigger the requirement of a Category 1 site plan. This amendment 2507 adds a condition that specifies that an accessory dwelling not be greater than 75% of the gross floor area of a single-family detached dwelling, bringing it into alignment with how the state defines accessory dwelling units. With the legislation on ADUs that was passed in Annapolis recently, the state is limiting how local jurisdictions can regulate accessory dwelling units, and one of the limitations is that the local jurisdiction cannot establish setback requirements that exceed the existing accessory structure setback requirements from side and rear lot lines. So that's why we're proposing to remove the existing language from condition number 6. I should note here that our requirement currently on the books is that all accessory structures 500 square feet or greater must meet the setback requirements of a primary structure. So this amendment would essentially only be a substantive change for accessory dwellings less than 500 square feet in size. And we're proposing to add a condition that the accessory dwelling have adequate vehicular access as determined by the Department of Public Works. We believe this type of requirement is within the purview of the type of regulations on accessory dwellings allowed by the state, and we believe it's common sense. The revisions being proposed in this text amendment 2508 address some outstanding issues related to daycares and home daycares as home occupations. What we're looking at on this slide and in the next slide addresses parking requirements for home daycares. These revisions would require home daycares to provide one drop-off parking space in addition to the parking spaces required for the dwelling, as well as an additional parking space for each employee that is not a permanent resident of the dwelling in which the home occupation is located. And the revision on this slide reduces the parking requirements for home daycares and daycare centers with 12 or fewer clients from a pick-up drop-off area that accommodates 2 cars and reduces it to 1 car. And the revisions on this slide and the previous slide would bring the parking requirements for home daycares into closer alignment with the requirements as they were under the previous ordinance. This text amendment also proposes to relax some of the requirements for home occupations generally. Special exception approval from the Board of Appeals would no longer be required for Class A home occupations in these districts. Class A home occupations are those where employees must be a permanent resident of the dwelling, but on-site appointments of customers or clients are permitted, with the exception of home daycare centers. Only 2 clients or fewer are permitted on premise at a time. And special exception approval for Class B home occupations would only be required in the Waterfront Community District and Residential District going forward. Class B home occupations are permitted to employ up to 2 equivalent full-time employees in addition to employees that are permanent residents of the dwelling in which the home occupation is located. And during the zoning ordinance update, one last-minute change we made was removing the use public utility lines and accessory structures from the ordinance. We've since decided that this use should remain in the ordinance, and that is what the proposed amendments in the next two slides are addressing. So public utility lines and accessory structures would be a permitted use in all zoning districts in the county. The revisions here under text amendment 2510 are relatively minor and mostly just clarifying existing policies for accessory structures. So a building permit shall be required for the construction or installation of an accessory structure 200 square feet or greater in size, and is required for all structures within the critical area, and all detached accessory structures, regardless of size, shall meet the required setbacks in Table 19-1 unless otherwise specifically permitted or restricted by this article. And an additional provision in this section has been proposed. On a property without a primary structure, an accessory structure may be permitted if special exception approval is granted from the Board of Appeals. And the revisions proposed in text amendment 2511 are also mostly clarifying existing policies, specifically that final detailed site development plan approval shall be obtained prior to the issuance of any building permits for all Category 1 and Category 2 development. No permits are allowed to be issued until site plan approval has been finalized. And final subdivision plat approval shall be obtained prior to the issuance of any building permits. No permits are allowed to be issued until subdivision approval is finalized.
I think we do have one more, 25-12. It was included in all the documentation provided through the agenda. It just doesn't look like it's up on the screen.
Right, I can read through
Right.
what's proposed.
Just speak into the microphone.
Sorry.
Okay, so we're missing the slide here for text amendment 25-12, but I can go ahead and read it. The final text amendment is addressing temporary signs. Under general provisions, condition 7 would state, temporary signs shall not be posted on any non-designated public property, including but not limited to rights-of-way, utility poles, signposts, or landscaping. For the purposes of this section, non-designated shall mean that the public property for which the poster has not received express written permission to post the temporary sign from the appropriate governing authority for the public property. And so that concludes the presentation. Like the previous presentation, this was a work session for informational purposes, so we don't need any decisions to be made tonight. But if there are any questions, please go ahead.
Gentlemen, any questions or comments?
Can you give us examples of accessory structures under 200 square feet? What would that be? Is that a shed, a deck, or is that
Up here.
up here?
A small animal enclosure and, yeah.
Okay,
A rabbit hutch.
okay. I mean, just, so you can build something up to 200 square feet as long as you're not in the critical area and not have to jump through the hoops and get building permits and all that. All right, thank you.
Is that it? Thank you all. We appreciate your help tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to item 11, items of interest. You have received the site plan and subdivision list. They are for informational purposes only. Do you have any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, that moves us to item 12, public comment. We don't have anybody in the room at the moment, public to speak. Is there anyone online who wishes to speak? Please raise your hand or unmute by using *6. No hands are raised. That brings us to item 13, adjournment.
Could I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn. A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you so much, gentlemen.